Saturday. It's like, yeah,
Hi there. How are you? Just waiting. We needed you to start. There's only 3 of us.
I like to, yeah. It's just,
Okay, Dan is not here tonight.
Recording
so
in progress.
I'll be running the meeting. We will call the meeting to order at 7:01, now that we have a quorum. First thing we have on our agenda is any deletions or additions to the agenda. We do have 2. One is for the board to discuss the White Creek plow contract, and the other one is an auto insurance.
Yeah,
Yep.
change regulatory piece of paper.
So we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to add the White Creek plow contract and the auto insurance issue to the current agenda.
Second that motion.
Next, we have the approval of the minutes from the,
Make the motion to approve the minutes.
okay, motion made by Jamie, seconded by Cynthia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Lots and lots of people here tonight, so we'll try to do this orderly and
Quick, I was here a couple of weeks ago, remember, and I had pictures, I didn't have. Well,
Or I can make copies.
copy please. I have pictures for Jamie of, I've also contacted, which I was instructed to do, the, and she made contact back with me a little bit, but then I've heard nothing. Commission, zoning board, and I haven't heard anything from them. They just haven't got to me, it's only been a little less than a week. So, I have new Jamie because
No, I was contacted by A&R, Agency of Natural Resources, and because a permit from them as well,
right.
before he can do any burning. So I have instructed,
What about the burning without a permit? I mean, it's not very good fine, but follow the rules.
right, no, I don't know if I can go back on that. I will reach out with Lars and see if there's, usually if it's reported at that time, then I can go and make them put it out and stuff like that. I don't know if I can go back on that, but I back and speak with Lars on that.
All right, Lars also did say it's up to you, so I wanna
Yep.
emphasize. There's no place on that less than 100-yard wide property, it's not gonna affect. Protect the residents, he's not a resident, it's an eyesore. Well, I hate to keep harping on it, I'm waiting to hear from the planning commission so I can meet with them, they haven't got back.
Go out down there, so. But if you've got the pictures with the dates, then I can address that. Go with Lars.
All right, thank you.
anything else, Paul?
Observation and 2 questions. Did, based upon the last meeting, did gear ordered?
Yes.
And if so, what's the estimated date of delivery? Another one is just a process question. When you authorize AP vouchers here, are the checks already signed? I mean, are the checks already made out? This is the voucher then to go back to cut the checks.
What do you mean by AP?
Accounting, that's all I needed to know.
I guess it'll be me. Investigation fire chief. I'm here to the select board into a suspension investigation. I'm looking to see
if I can see an investigation record at this.
Timeliness and issues. Dan has experienced a pretty significant family anything, and it's a two-person investigation. So we're still at step one.
You do have 3 things placed. I mean, this is basically equal to a human resources investigation. On average, it would take 1 to 2 weeks. And we're at 20 days at this point. Something to start happening.
I would say that by next week, something will start happening.
I think that is a good point. Could we have some sort of like, then, you know, Glenn or I need to join you or something has to happen. I totally understand move forward with that, and I know that wouldn't be the most desirable thing, but would that be
Sure.
appropriate?
Works for me.
I mean, does that make
That's
sense?
fine by me.
When do you want to say bye?
You said by next week. I
Well,
mean,
Dan and I talked, and I said, based on what's going on in his
right.
personal stuff, that we were hoping to shoot for the middle to like Wednesday or Thursday to start doing some.
Of next week. So why don't we say that if like on Tuesday, on Monday or Tuesday, you check with Dan,
Mhm.
things are, you know,
Yep.
and, you know, I'm willing to participate. I don't know what Glenn's situation is. I know it's not the best, but I think that we can't afford to let it not happen.
Okay.
If need be, absolutely.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Moving on, new business.
Quick question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
Do an investigation with that magnitude, so are they gonna, is that gonna be handed over to somebody, or I hear even though, you know, what the experience is with the investigations here, but I know there's certain steps.
You don't think I know how to operate an investigation?
Saying you per se, but I have people saying, there's certain, you know, timeliness is of utmost importance usually when you initiate something like this. It's either not important or, in my opinion,
Well, there's certain things you can't control, and that's family emergencies.
absolutely.
You know, so Dan and I were tasked with this because
Correct.
And we felt it was important that 2 people do it. One individual didn't do a good enough job or didn't ask the right questions. So there was family emergency. I might add that has caused a delay. Is it ideal? Nope, but that's the reality we live in right now and have to deal with it. So we'll get life, then we'll adjust. So, anything else? Okay. Next, we have new business. Green Mountain National Forest Spruce Peak update is the copies. So I understand we have a whole lot of people here to discuss that. Does anybody want to start? Sally?
Yes, hi. Hi, everyone. Myself, but really then hand it right over to Tammy and Martina. So, those of you who don't know me, my name is Sally Minikian. The property is at the end of Murray and Benedict Hollow. And we were last here 2 years ago discussing the nomination to secure the federal funding to say that the funding was secured. So now we began the very long and lengthy process of adding lands to the forest. So we're at the point where we can really start working with all the other things to keep moving forward. So we just thought it was a great time to come back and meet with the select board and provide an update. And but Martina take the lead from here, because this is where us as the partner start to step back, and the Forest Service really steps forth and does what they do. Please. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Tammy Schroeder. I'm the realty specialist on the project. Like Sally said, it's a process, so we're probably 2 years usually. Kind of pending. It's very exciting. We're just doing due diligence right now. I'm waiting on a map, just checking out easements and rights of ways to make sure we have our heads wrapped around all of that. Land description verification, and then we can use that to get the land appraised. And that can take a little bit of time. That has to go to our regional office.
I think the last one I had was a year it took to get the appraisal.
Yeah, it can take, and hopefully the market slowed down a little bit. I think that was part of phase one environmental site assessment, and then once the appraisal comes back, we'll get an offer letter to us. So yeah, to TCF. The next big steps that'll happen. So yeah.
Great.
I was here 2 years ago as well with Sally, to talk about this property. Don't have anything specific. We were actually out there on a site visit earlier in September, and there's a lot of really resources out there, so we're excited about the acquisition. But if you have any specific questions, we just wanted to be able to at least try to address those if you have them.
Okay.
Acres, is it
2,700.
Yep, give or take.
Yeah.
Okay.
Prior to
So like the hunting clubs that are now, are they going to continue, or they?
They will sunset.
Okay.
Yep, and they've known that since our acquisition, that our intention was to.
I'm on the other side.
Yep.
I bore to the top, so.
Yep. Yeah. So they'll sunset. They'll terminate when we
Okay.
but we'll maintain them until we transition the property to the.
One of the big issues for me, and I think for some other, was the nature of the access in terms of the road access and the parking side. And my recollection, I don't have the paperwork in front of us, is that we supported this acquisition on condition that you resolve the issue. Because if it's a question of people accessing that property by the town at the cost of the neighboring property owners, I won't be able to support this acquisition. And I'm also in Arlington is the most important. So if you have no developments on this, I understand you're still doing the easements and all this kind of stuff. But I just really want to highlight to you that if you can't resolve that issue, and I hope you're working on that.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason that inspired us to meet with you, is that now that we have the funding, we'd like to share we're providing information and working to address that issue. Actually, Martina, you had a similar.
Yeah, it's still
a process. Not a great
process.
example.
It's not a great
Okay,
example,
never mind.
but in or another property called the White Rocks Gateway that is also through the Water Conservation Fund, will be acquired by the U.S. Forest Service, and we are working with the trust for an issue regarding parking. People are parking along the road, and there's concern, like you expressed, regarding how to mitigate the parking along the road. Desire is to work, it has not yet been worked out, first of all, yet, but we always like to work with a local help secure funding, because obviously building the parking lot is
It's already
harder.
there. There's a log landing up there. It's already there.
Okay.
I mean, you said you've been. Okay, you need to deal with the question of, can you maintain that properly? Is it sufficient? And how are you going to deal with the fact that it's a private road that people are using to access that? And the town, if I have anything about, the town is not going to bear the cost of upgrading something different in the records. So I'm looking for a proposal about how to deal with those things. The parking lot is already there. Look at it.
Well, I just haven't been, because I was fighting fire, out on a fire assignment.
It was a different version of a family emergency.
Yeah.
She was out.
Fire, so,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
if you want to buy
It was
this
a legit
property,
fire.
if you want approval to buy this property, you have to taxpayers of Arlington.
Yep. And that wasn't-
I understand all the benefits of this purchase, understand the disadvantages, but the key thing is this access problem has to be solved, and it can't be on the backs of landowners.
Yep.
So I would suggest that you might want to go look at your proposed property.
Access, and our hope is to continue to update the select board as we can do. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Is the most appropriate person to work with within the agent just to really figure out information about road access to funnel into Nick?
I'm happy to work with you if the board would allow it.
But you want to bear in mind that the turnaround at the end of Benedict-Call Road
Yep, it's a snowplow
has to be
turnaround.
clear
Yep.
for snow. The private road also has to be accessible for ambulances or other vehicles to the extent that that's possible.
The Benedict Hollow Road. The actual.
But that's not the issue. Benedict-Call Road is
but
not the issue.
I'm just thanking you on the access. It looks great. But thanks, Cynthia. So we'll keep Nick updated and informed and continue to move forward on that. About Forest Service Management, maybe it was Nancy.
Jim, you had something, right?
So the section of the road that Cynthia is talking about off of Benedict Hollow serves, I think, 4 different, maybe even more than 4. And
No, 1, 2, 3.
landowners would benefit from this road upgrade that definitely needs to happen if it's to go through, and I would hope that they'd be very supportive.
I mean, my impression is that property up there has changed hands several times, and the issue of easement or access or right of way on the road has been done in every time that, somewhere, every time things have changed. Hunting, there's all kinds of stuff. So there should be sufficient documentation to resolve this issue.
Where does Benedict Hollow Road, the town road, actually end?
My understanding is that it ends at the
Where that end of that road is. Like many things in this town's past, there and that's something that we intend on getting to the bottom of before. I did want to add that I have identified the potential funding source for some of this type of work, and that's something that I will have conversations with Sally and the board as we move forward with this.
Thanks, Nick. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Anything else for the
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the time. We'll be in touch, and I'm excited to keep.
Next, we have the river management discussion.
Watershed people, I guess, I'm not sure who in the public wants to be kind of a leader in this discussion, but this was placed here after, and that was a topic where how we deal with these public safety importantly affect Arlington firefighters is absolutely an important town to continue to have conversations on, to continue to reckon with, and continue to plan for. We know that hazards unduly burden municipal property taxpayers while keeping public safety function to make sure that our volunteers who run our fire department are not putting themselves in needless danger. People in incidents on the river this summer, it's put this very much top of mind with the tree incident from the other day, or a couple of weeks ago. So that is the kind of starting point of this conversation. And
I'd be happy to kick it off.
Absolutely.
With my comments, and I actually requested that we have a topic a couple years ago when in one summer we had trees that had to be addressed, and they were all just downstream from the Arlington Rec Park. Two of them were on some sort of an agreed upon protocol. Up until it was generally left to private landowners or Mother Nature, the river. And but the trees that happened 2 years ago were substantial and beyond the ability of a private. And so we at the same time the Basin One. That includes the Bat and Kill, the Loomsack, and the Hudson River. One of the strategies in the implementation is much large woody debris in the name of habitat and erosion and flood control in our streams. So we coordinate. There's a guy over there who was wielding a chainsaw in some pretty hazardous conditions. Summer. And we had a couple meetings about that. I passed my notes from those meetings and what was and then this past August, a massive aspen tree fell across, and it became clear all went the way that we had hoped. Sent me an email telling me about the tree. I then called Josh Carvajal, Department of Environmental Conservation, who's our. I got in touch with several members of Trout Unlimited. And then we met with the select board that night, and we convinced most cost effective to just remove part of the tree to establish a safe passage. And everybody who's involved recognize that safe passage and human safety is the priority here. This very loose protocol that we discussed about, but never actually had any action taken on it. And the reason why I wanted to bring this back up is that, yes, we do have a protocol that works. Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Josh, and to you. It was taken care of in 3 days. But just that have not been fully fleshed out, and those 3 things that I have notes of, then we could open it up to the grace of Trout Unlimited for, first of all, taking but there's also costs involved. Whoever is doing the work, they ought to, and part of the discussion that we had originally was a funding source that can be held until needed. And I think between all of the user groups who are sitting in this room in the Basin 1 Tactical Basin Plan, if we all chip in, we can establish a sinking fund sooner than later. And then, so that's my first point. My second is notifying the public and general emergency. Summers ago, when the trees went down just downstream into my own hands, and I made a big sign that said danger warning, no float, all vessels, 2 large trees are down, and I took some services at the rec park. Is that, I don't know, was it a good call? Yes. Regrets about doing that at all. In retrospect, last month when just downstream of the covered bridge, with all due respect, Nick, the public, but it was a couple signs this big stapled to trees.
Absolutely, that's something that moving into the future, knowing these are going to be hazards, we should have some permanent signs. Fill in the blank with a marker.
Yeah.
That's exactly what needs to happen for the long run safety of the with a space established at the fishing access, and certainly with a plan of where to put it. As the 2 main points.
Right.
Deciding whether we should put signage at any 2 points need to be covered as part of any.
My recollection is that when the Marty Oakland's, gosh, must have been 5 years ago now, the river, we put orange tape on it, and there was a portage, like there was a way for people to get out of the river and go around it. And I think that one of the problems with saying the river's closed is, will people we should always try to see if there's a way that, if we can. And so I would even wonder about not just signs entrance point, but a sign near the down tree itself. Because people don't always, heads up about those trees and people kept coming in the river.
Well, certainly every different. And has
but I like the
challenges.
idea of big permanent plastic signs.
That
maybe
can be
that
updated.
that could be updated.
A mark. The point of every tree is a different scenario. Where it goes down is going to be dependent where those signs go. A certain put in, then we would not need to alert people. However, we need to acknowledge that there are more than just the to the top of everybody's mind, the rec park, the scales, the covered bridge, than that people put in. So they all need to be addressed. You could easily portage around that. When we went out there and cut that tree, I think we were up to our knees maybe a little deeper, but it depends on the current and the depth. especially the one near Dawn's was very deep. The one wasn't so deep. I mean, Andrew was walking around up. It was the current that was the real tragic scenario happening there. Once you got into that current, there is no way of bailing. You could not get out. You were going to hit.
Have you thought about the possibility, like a rope, you know, like the way a rope with those floats on it or something, the way they use it upstream of a downed tree, you know, with flagging on it or something, so that people could catch onto the rope? Situations where we can't get a tree out immediately, and you know, because we have to get it, we can't get to it, or some other kind of thing. So I just wonder, I wouldn't want to put something that would make things worse.
I think a rope across the river would be.
Okay, all
If you
right.
get somebody that, and that's what my family worked on this year. We pulled 10 float already. Now it's gonna take them. Because it's not gonna stay in the water. You're gonna have to go tight across to begin with.
Yeah.
It would.
Along the same public outreach issue, I think Jamie was the one who came up with this thought system, where we could have, beyond just a sign, something that says extreme danger, or when tree, it may be extreme weather condition. The water could, the coin, it could be so shallow that experience to begin with, and people may not realize that until they get out there and they're walking more than they're floating. And when that happens, then we're disturbing the trout and the trout habitat. We need to have some sort of outreach to inform they should expect when they get in their floating device. Too high water that is just incredibly dangerous, or you're not going to have fun dragging your boat or your float, and you're going to be up the rocks, especially certain time of years when the bugs are laying their eggs and their calves. It's a good idea.
I mean, you can ask any of these firemen that are here. Every time, 90% of you to get in the water.
It's unbelievable. I've seen it so high, it's almost hitting the 313 bridge, and people are ducking and going.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that my understanding.
Can I dive in real quick? I'm here online, Doug Lyons with the Watershed Alliance. Do you mind if I dive in real quick?
Yep, go ahead.
To kind of just to expand on what Jim was saying, if we want to discuss safety on the river, trees are obviously an important part of that. But you need to do a whole drill down of why these things are happening and in what circumstances they are happening. High water, at what flow should somebody be in the tube? Is it at 600 CFS, 800 CFS, tree or no tree? You get people in the water at a certain flow, they're going to get in trouble, whether there's trees in there or not. That's number one. Number two, and people may not like me bringing this up, people drink on the river. You can have people drinking on the river, making bad decisions and getting in trouble. So if you want to, trees are obviously an important part of this discussion, but if the town wants to have a serious, meaningful discussion about safety on the river, you need to expand this discussion to numerous different aspects of what it means to float in a moving water. Because it's not just trees, there's a lot of other things that go on. And it includes people that go in the water that just shouldn't be there. You can't make things antiseptic to make it so safe that nobody's going to get hurt. People use bad judgment all the time, and that's on them, but there are things that you have to think about, flow rates, alcohol use, all those sort of things all compound to become a problem. Somebody makes a bad decision, they wind up in a tree because they've been drinking too much, or because the water is simply too high. So I just want to throw that out there, and, leave it at that. But as this discussion has to go beyond just trees, there's much more to it than just that.
I think we've
Trees are
had,
part of it, but there's more to it than that. So I'll just leave it there.
I got one other,
hang on,
to end.
hang on. I think we've had these discussions in the past about what we can legally and legally cannot do. And I think we need to potentially look into that more, because I don't know what we legally can and cannot do, other than warn people.
Yeah, we can't control access to the river.
Right.
We do not regulate this river. The state regulates
Correct.
the river. But we. So if we wanted to put up a red flag advisory because the tree's down, because the water's high in our are totally within our rights. In terms of the alcohol, we've gone back and forth about that in the past, and I think that where we ended up was that while they were boating under the influence or whatever, and if they're drunk when they're floating on the river, they're going to be drunk when they get in their vehicle. And being able to call about someone who was inebriated. The problem is there's no cell phone service in West Arlington, which is hard to deal with that. I'm interested in a further discussion of that because I think that a lot of the injuries and problems for neighboring landowners come from the bad behavior of people who are intoxicated. So, but I also, because that's kind of like something that people
Wanting to and being able to, I think are two
exactly.
different things.
But if we want to take that big step, we better can control, for instance, the consumption of alcohol on public property, but we don't own the river, so we.
Curious if there's been investigation, if anyone's looked into rivers across the country that undergo far greater seasonal and annual kill does, and have far greater risks than a single tree down the river, where if you take the wrong channel, you're not getting boats and canoes and kayaks, and they do so all the time with inform people and educate them as to the risks of getting in the water so that they understand what they're doing. Because it seems, from my perspective, there are a lot of people here who get in the river and don't understand that this isn't a theme park that's managed resource, and they don't understand and what is it that they're doing that isn't being done here, or could be done here better to understand that people who are getting in the river understand that there might be a tree, and it's their responsibility to be aware of it. So that's just kind of my...
Well, and I think one of our big concerns is the first responders who then have
Sure.
to rescue the people.
Absolutely.
And I know that when you're talking about avalanches and things like that, they start you're going to pay for the rescue. I mean, I don't know that that applies here, but I think that I don't access, so you can educate people, and if they've sometimes already selected themselves out because it's more dangerous, and it just doesn't look dangerous to people at all. But I think that's a good point.
Yeah. May I, I'm in, and I appreciate Jim's perspective on the our objective, but I think in reality, like, without that educational piece that we're discussing right now, I work a lot harder because the trees become this image of and really like try to limit it. Our chapter would get behind any educational initiative that we can establish to make people more pleasant, because it lulls you into a false sense of security. It's pleasant to float. I've been there. It's really long for things to go sideways, and if you don't necessarily have that recreational awareness, that like risk management. I came up through like outdoor education circles, and you get out and assess the situation. Or not everyone's doing that, and so if education improves, I can see our first responders doing less work because maybe people are being more prepared, just as they are if they're going into the back country on a backpacking. But sometimes we have to offer them support in the greens, but the reality is like if yourself out, if you're aware, if you have the understanding, you get yourself out. So support and the dialogue we've had about these tree removals, because I think that's a
Not
great
tree
first
removal.
step. Appreciate your edit there. No, because we'd love to see as much woody debris as we can stand from a recreational and safety standpoint in the river, because it's improving fish habitat, it's improving come through in our surveys and what Jacob sees in his. And that's gonna bring more money into town, like make our little town of Arlington for a fishing destination. And we're seeing the numbers go up, and we're seeing it anecdotally, but also in the science. So,
Do we have any sense of who the people that get in trouble are? Are they people who? Are they people, just individuals? Are they people renting from the liveries? Because when we're talking about education and warning, if they're renting from the liveries, that's a point of education to provide, the river rules to the liveries, but they have an incentive to rent their stuff, so it's kind of hard.
So we've had one tree just up from my house. We heard the hollers and screams, went and helped them out. One was a grandmother with 2 grandkids and a huge cooler in the middle of the canoe.
And they had rented the canoes.
Yes, it completely threw the balance off of the whole thing. So the company came and got the canoe afterwards. I know they did. My brother. Busloads of students from. Where were the kids from that flipped over right down by the camps on 313? They were from Massachusetts. Some whole bunch of their own. It was a summer camp. They brought a whole truckload, probably 50 kids. 2 of them flipped over. They went down, smacked their heads on the bottom. Then we get called to get them out. Every time it has something to do with a tree. Somebody just, they can't. With the channels, as you know, we had the woman that was trapped under the tree. We went out to the tree with the rope, life jackets and everything. We pulled her back in the boat to float to New York to get their car.
A lot of them are more boats than tubers.
Yes.
Than a tube.
Canoes.
You
Yep.
flip out of a tube and.
Yep.
Put all the signage up in the world that people don't read it.
Right. I mean, the majority of it are, well, this summer of it has been rentals. In the past, it's been individuals.
But it might be worth keeping track of it.
My wife and I sat 500 in one day, went down by our house. I mean, that river is used huge in the summer. 2 inches of rain to bring it up, and then you can't see anything in there because it dirties up. People are flipping over. I mean, we had one right at the state line. Same thing. They ended up getting flipped over. They ended up into Shushan. Sorry, but
just an anecdote to add to your point is I led week-long canoe trips for years with college-age students, and a lot of them were novice or beginner. And they must have paddled had to, as they, on flat water, went back and forth. It's not gonna go well.
No, it doesn't. And where this tree was right at the bend. It came off of a little. You're talking steep bank to the road on one side and with a cornfield. So getting out and getting around it. I mean,
And this gets to the last point on my list of things that I wanted to address is working closer with the outfitter. I invited Don and his wife from Backfill Valley. Get Big to come, but I was not able to get in touch with them. I left them the notice in their door. It's obvious that there needs to be some buy-in and coordination between and whether that's getting them involved in this or we develop a flyer that every single person who rents any kind of floating device gets handed them. Hopefully they won't throw it in the river, but if we could provide the outfitters and they all get that before they rent their craft. I think that might be a success. It certainly has worked. Our outreach has worked. And I think it could go a long way if we all put our heads together and develop gets when they pay for a boat or two. And I would your input on this because I know that you feel very strong about this.
To say quite a few things. One, the outfitters, and I don't know where these people are getting their equipment, but it's not from us. We in a day. We have 2 trips only, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock. They ride, show them the put-in point, we show them the takeout point, anything along the way that might be a hazard. Aware of that. And so, you know, you talk about 500 people in a day, God only knows, I know they come from all over the place. I was working with a Boy Scout troop earlier this year. For them to deliver a certain number of boats to where they were going to put in. We went through all that. When I got there were already 20 to 30 people at that point. Coming from somewhere else. You know, those are the kind of things that we have nothing to do with, that we cannot control if we want to. And, you know, I've been on the ground, things like that. The Forest Service takes care of the access points. Authorizations and say, you go, you don't go. You know, that have several different townships, several different states, you know, up and down the river and from a governmental point, but even that, I don't know where I'll back off again a little bit. I get really worked up about this. This is my livelihood. I've been doing this all my life. We're very careful about. We don't just say, take off, have fun. We don't even rent tubes to leave without us. We carry them in our van to where they're going to be putting in the river, and we show them where we're getting you out, et cetera, et cetera. Other outfitters and other organizations, you know, they do it very differently. And 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, and some of you may remember Jim Walker back in Kill was working with consulting Jim. We did an unofficial survey one day at the Red Covered Bridge. Over 80% of the people going down the river were private boaters. By that, you know, and it was church groups, it was individuals, you know, all of them. How do you control it? I don't know. I wish I knew. The COVID year, we completely shut down. Saw down at the state line access point, hordes of people, massive numbers of people. To me, it was disgusting. We handle so many people a day on the river. To me, the river is overused. It is too crowded. After COVID, we only operate 4 days a week. We do 2 simple trips a day. That's it. Things out there helter-skelter randomly. So, and as far as I'm the only outfitter left operating on the river. There is the big bat and kill. That's mainly a tubing operation. People out there.
Another. We look at the river gauge every day,
Yes.
multiple times a day, and we track the people when they came, when they voted, what it is currently. So if they came on a low water day and now it's higher, we're like, oh, you were there when it was 4.3. Oh, we talked to people about the river level. We talked about what's going on this year because of high water.
Oh, yeah.
And we educated people. We said open because it's just not safe.
We had people mad at us because we wouldn't point on the river level. We will not get anybody out above this level, regardless. And we had people really mad. Well, we made a river. Where's the gauge? We use the Battenville gauge. It's the USGS gauge. And that, you know, any gauge is just going to give you a relative, you know, high and low. Yes. That changes. It's also, you know, it's coming from here, Arlington, than it is further downstream. We're aware of that. We know that. And we watch the weather religiously. And we're very, very careful with our customers.
Do you think that there's, in terms of how the river is in Vermont and how it is in New York, do you think that, I mean, there's still tree hazards because trees down the Rose Creek, but do you think that makes it a little less hazardous? No, it doesn't matter. People just, okay.
One of the most dangerous parts of the river is Foster's Bend, which is the big bend down. Yeah. A few years ago, you probably all know how bad that was because the river redirected.
The cutoffs
there
and
were
things
trees.
like that.
Usually do not put customers on that part of the river. We either get them out of because we don't want to mess with it. We don't want to have people getting stuck, injured, lost, whatever. But we can't stop, you know, what everybody else is doing.
DEC, the Greenwich GEC guy, and asked him about that because there were Halifax. There was a lot of issues with that. And they came back and they said the Batten Hill is a trout stream. We don't care about recreational boaters. The tree stays.
Ultimately, they did come in and do some cutting.
Cut part of it, because that's the thing, just to cut enough of it to make. At one point, we did have a big plan to restore the channels through, what is it?
Yeah.
And make that whole, because the river's being forced to do a sharp turn that it can't do. But it was a very expensive project, and we just didn't move forward with it. But can't regain equilibrium, and it's not good for the habitat. It's not good for the landowners. It's not good for boaters. But it would be really, really hard to fix.
Yeah, and there are other environmental issues. Like I said, 90% of the time, we don't send anybody through that part of the river. You know, if we know they are then
how to deal with it.
And we either have photos.
Could you provide any of your materials that you give? Like, what is the gauge when you say, okay, you know, we're not going to go? And I realize there's a lot of judgment, or what you provide useful sharing with Jim, because we've had things that we worked up in the past, but you might have something that would be.
Because we do every trip is a custom trip to us.
Okay.
You know, you make your reservation, you of the river, we explain where you're getting in, where you're getting out, you know, what to expect along the way. If somebody says, oh yeah, I'm an experienced canoeist, and they're not.
Right.
You know, when they get out there, they get, oh yeah, we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
They get in there, they can't even hold a paddle right, you know, but can do. And we have told people no at times. But,
How often do you float the river yourself?
Me? Usually once or twice a month. Of a potential problem, we go check it out, either by floating down to it, or if it's along River Road or something physically. But yeah, we hear of any hazard from our customers, somebody else, somebody who lives on the river, we'll go check it out. Even that, and I'll show you how cautious we are. We don't put most people in at the wreck part because there's a little bit of a rapid and a little bit of a turn right when you get below the before you get down to the West Mountain Bridge, the River Road Bridge down there. So we usually go below that point. There's a little, and that's usually where we start people. We have had people that go all the way, this may sound crazy to you, but it's an outward bound. They go all the way up to Sunderland, and they come all the way down, and they spend several days on the river. The majority of our trips go from the scales, as you're we call it the cutout, because it's just
The wool wagons.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. I didn't know that. But glad to hear that. But if somebody wants a little more and has a little more experience, we use the wreck part. Rarely do we go above the campground because of the. And I have too, personally. You know, people, we get calls. Oh, my boat is pinned up here, like I said, at the scales, and usually that will go either if it's a real short trip. Area, you know, the state line access point. I will say this from my own observation on the river from the picnic area to Eagleville. You know, it's just insane. It's really awful. And so we try to get people off the river at the picnic area. And we don't use Eagleville as an access point because of multiple reasons, you know, just giving you that.
Right.
But it's our best. We do, I mean, I'm open to suggestions. We're doing this a long, long time, and we try. On the river. I wish there were a way to limit the use because it does get abused.
The other thing that's in the multiple years we've been doing this is the hardware store sells a kayak, so anybody can get a kayak, you know, and it's just the Stewart sells the river tubes, the available kayak at the hardware store that you know how to paddle in it, and you know they all jump on the Banville because it's the local area, and it just becomes a different charge point, and that's nothing. They're not coming through us, they're not asking us, they're not consulting what the conditions are. I do get calls from, and I'm happy to relay if I know of any kind of hazards or dangers out there, but we don't get a lot of those calls. So.
And I thought it was interesting when you said that I can understand that, but the river usage, it is just amazing. I said I was working this river as a guy in the 80s, and you didn't see, 5 tubes in a week. People came aluminum Grumman canoes and that type of thing. For many years. Now we do rent tubes, but we have limits. That kind of thing. And
Well, as Brian said, the tubes, if you come off a tube, you're pretty much free and clear to go. The canoes in front of our house twice this year.
the canoe rescue is a lot more difficult than a tube.
Yep.
And most people, if they lose a tube, it's just not.
Yep. Wrapped around some trees down there this year too.
Yeah. So,
sorry.
partly self-defense, and I'll stand up and take shots, if we need. With anything that Jim has said and that you guys are talking about, protect the trout habitat, yes. Under the Forest Service, but it is that. And people should understand, and we say this, I say it every day, this is not an amusement park. So if you want that, you go up to the Great Escape. This is a natural flow river. And we have people, it's like, what? Well, don't you just shut off the river and go get your... Well, no. And somebody last weekend, they said, well, where does this water come from? I'm like, what are you talking about? In the river. Where does it come from? You're somebody that didn't have, and things like that. I don't know, but we get all kinds.
BJ, go ahead.
Brian Hawley, Arlington Fire. I just wanted to just started a swift water class. We're at the awareness level. Out with Shushan area, they pinpoint all their hazard areas, and maybe that's something that we, so that as the fire department and as the outfitters or whoever, we can pinpoint all these hazard locations, and it helps us when we're going there. It helps you guys. How that class was, we should pinpoint it because we know them, and we've never really time to write up an action plan and everything on it. So if we could work on that, would be great.
Well, I would want to know anytime there's a tree down that's a hazard. If a customer doesn't tell us and nobody else knows, we don't know. I do go up and down the river. Idea to have that, and let everybody know, here's a tree down.
And I think where you've got a field and the landowners, but like along the rec park and Kill, if somebody is stuck and they're on the other side of the river, you can't actually get to the other side of the river. There are trails coming down lane, so there's I think pinpointing current hazards as well as keeping track of evolving, getting that training to go out there and check it out, but also understanding and all the places to go in that you guys might not know, although I'm sure you know most of them.
Well, here's another anecdotal thing, and I got stuck under a tree and almost drowned. And said, well, where was it? So we go up and look. Tried to grab hold of the tree to stop. That's a no-no. We tell people that we can take care of it. But then the other side, people who've had problems, not just our customers, but other people, they said, pointing to me. It's like, well, I can't, I don't have the authority to know that we can call Nick or whatever and say, hey, there's a tree down. Or will find your pants off if you get out there with a chainsaw, and I don't, you know, to cut off a tree. So.
Well, the tree still belongs to the. But one thing I wonder about is I think that one thing that's the tubes and people coming from out of state with the canoes and the buses and everything like that is the internet, and you know, like is going to pop up. I don't know if there's any way to use the town's website or other ways so that when people Google that, they get something that has something cautionary on it. You know, in other words, if they're going to Google, you know, tubing in Arlington, river gauge, we have posting on the entry points, you know, somehow that we could kind of groups from places that we never heard of and that have never been here before. It's not like we have some groups that come year after year after year and they know things and they know how things work. But when you have just a random group, if in addition to paper things that we try to post at the entrance point, we can try to use the internet for our purposes, and I don't know how to do
No,
it.
and actually that's a really good point. One thing style tab on the town website, because like as part of some kind of tourism like guidance effort that helps answer some of the questions that people walking into town hall saying, I'm in Arlington as a tourist, what do I do? And
Yeah, you want to say the rec park.
you want to say, but those could be well nested on a landing page that includes that at least we have a landing page that is not looking like we only the entire thing as don't come and
Right.
float the bat and kill.
Right. Right.
But it could absolutely be a static landing page that if we're going hazard system that we can update and say, hey, the river is at a high hazard stage. It's on our website. It's also posted at the access points, and then we can at least address it. For it online, you have a place to land. If you're searching, if you see it in person, you have a place to land. We're 2 to 7, say, locations along the Battenkill at various putting points. And that may be part of coming out of the hazard mitigation planning that the fire department is endeavoring us to embark on.
Well, I think there's a state kiosk. I think there's a kiosk there. There's a kiosk at the rec park.
Yeah,
There's
so
a kiosk at the state
yeah,
line.
we'll definitely need to have a good.
Don't come to Arlington, but if you're going to come to Arlington and the water, you know,
Tips
go to the
for
rec
tubing
park,
back.
go to Lake Shaftesbury. Else, you know.
Yeah, and that could be easily something that, we have a landing page for this, we have a landing page for accesses for fishermen that are best, but that also includes that these tubing rules are also very relevant to you. But we can think about our website because that's going to have a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the out there coming for when we have hazards that pop up. If you want to leave me your best phone number of whether you want me to give you a call on your main line or send exactly how you want to be communicated
And
with.
vice versa, so that he's letting you know.
We can. The goal is to make sure that all the stakeholders have an open office, and as such, like this is certainly something like sure all of the outfitters know what are on the same page. The town fire department are on the same page with the conservation groups and the other entities out there that have an interest in the river as we start these discussions up. sinking fund, or I would probably make this a trust fund under the trustees of public funds, because then it is a private fund that is not, and it's not a creature of the select board. It's ultimately something where we convene our trustees when we need to draw on this and say, and that will open up some opportunities to allow this kind of behavior should be, where we've been striving to find a mechanism to understanding that there is a very uncomfortable position between Arlington taxpayers, and that's something the select board can think about in the future, whether we want to seek a privately trust under the trustees, or establish our own sinking fund that is separate from our fire department or our emergency management funding, see a either separate sinking fund or an operating line item each year funded by taxpayers in the meantime. But we could also work toward a privately funded trust. Already have to manage other trusts.
But Nick, this past time is the only time town funds were involved because it was such an extreme situation. In all the other times, we were able to get our partners with the. Just mentioned, we have something called, what was it called, the Bat and Kill Conservation Fund, I think it is. Used to. No, it was. There's some kind of fund.
There is a Bat and Kill dredging fund.
Yes,
that
the
sits
Bat
on
and
the
Kill
books.
dredging fund. Yes, but anymore. And I think the board changed the definition of the purpose of that for conservation. I don't know what's in that fund. Maybe we should look. I don't think it's more than $5,000.
We had one more comment from.
Yeah, I too, but Michael Fernandez been in kind of preliminary discussions with University of Vermont's area to begin discussions around acquiring to be able to conduct rapid assessments after large precipitation events, and it sounds like this might be a device of that kind. I wanted to throw that out there either for TU, the town, or the fire department, as that might be a tool, a survey drone that is capable of noting these changes in the bank without having to do a full-scale of these sorts of things. That's my first observation. My second is in other programs for a wide variety of natural resources issues.
What programs?
Greeter programs, largely greeters and aquatic invasive species. And I'm wondering if Trout Unlimited might be interested in pursuing a couple of AmeriCorps volunteer positions to points to note these hazards, because it's all well and good to put a sign up. Noted, there's a lot of crowding in these areas, there's a lot of traffic, so people aren't necessarily going to. And AmeriCorps funds are relatively easy to acquire. Greeter programs are also funded through Department of Environmental Conservation, I believe, in a percentage program, but I can't off the top of my head. But there are funds available for programs, and they aren't that expensive to run. Like, you can get a couple of greeters who are students who conflict issues, because you can have an actual human being at the launch site.
Well, the Backdoor Watershed Alliance actually had river stewards, and they were at the launch sites, but they weren't just greeting, they also and they help with planting and they help picking up trash. So they weren't quite greeters. I mean, I think that's an interesting idea. I don't know how effective it's been in other places, because I think that by the time people are to know whether there's any kind of modification on people's behavior. If you're telling them there's a giant tree down, don't go there, maybe they'll, listen and see see deploying greeters in that kind of a situation.
Well, even if it's just flagging, there's a map right here, this map is out for. Just if it's a matter of we can get some kind of AmeriCorps cost share people on days that we know are peak days or hazard days to be advising that these things are an issue. You might get fewer instances, wage opportunity of hundreds of people a day. So it's a win to you, it's a win for the fire department, and it comes at no cost to the taxpayer.
Well, let's connect because
I'd be happy to chat with y'all about that.
Our board is
Jim
interested in
and everybody.
supporting something like that.
Program of that nature, I'm sure, like Jim, would that be something you guys would be interested in working on as well?
Well, at least 3 summers, I think we did it.
Yeah.
And that was very successful, but it does take money.
Enjoying the greeting, I mean, it was much more, you know.
It was much more involved.
And then, on your drone thing, would you be hoping for a letter of support from this board? Would that help you on?
It's going direct to our request to the legislature, which doesn't typically, I mean,
Whatever
I might
need.
For the drone.
For the drone, yes. Well, and UVM does, our State Association of Conservation Districts both have that we can request. So if the town wants to request a drone survey of the river, or the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts or the University of Vermont, I'd be happy to sponsor that request.
Yeah, I'd certainly want to talk to you about that because I've heard some really great things out of the UVM program and seeing some of their work elsewhere in the state. Floods, they really showed what they can do. Oh my God!
That's when we started. All the conservation districts in the state started. We saw what UVM's drones can do. We're all pursuing this statewide.
Jacob, it should be noted that Jacob Fetterman with the HR has access to a drone. I don't know to what degree he personally possesses it, or I know that it's shared resources within the TU community, but there also is an opportunity there possibly to look at the HRI and see how we can get our hands on something like that during a period of, right after a high water event or something like that. And I know that Jacob this fall is going to be I think he's going to be using the drone for spawning surveys. So I can talk to him about the possibility of maybe identifying any new hazards while he's doing that as a secondary task. I can follow up with him on that.
I'm actually here. So,
I'm
here.
Sorry.
So, no, we do have a drone. I just wasn't going to offer it in the full.
Okay.
Like, I wouldn't be able to survey every square inch of the river, but at certain times when it's needed, I would be able to do something with a day or two notice, probably.
Yeah, and we're moving out of the periods of highest river traffic. We're still going to have people canoeing and kayaking, but what would be the next season with a little bit more of a framework, different things to try to inform people and try to keep everybody safe and preserve the habitat. We ought to be able to do those things. But
drone video of the before the July storms kind of record. So I'm not sure. Yeah, Jim Moore, who was associated with the fire department, did some awesome work on this, and it's sitting in my email somewhere. I'm happy to share it with the board as relevant. Really cool work.
well, I think what's really good is to keep that as a historical basis, because then as new things happen, we can
Want to identify the type of sensor that would best capture the type of we're looking for, and I'm not sure that video or even ortholinographic, that's that thermal or multispectral imaging is more important, and those are all different payloads that the drone would
But
carry.
we're mostly talking about big trees down in the river, those should be visible.
But yeah, let's think about that, about these capabilities and have conversation.
I'd suggest just consulting with the UVM people and asking them what they would think the payload would be.
Yeah, hear a lot of talk, which is really good. The one thing I would suggest or recommend that you set a date, because here it is, like Cynthia says, this is extremely low. You, at your March meeting, that you have signs or whatever you want to do ready to go. You know, be proactive about it, so that it's all done, you're ready to go, and you versus coming back again and discussing, oh, and here it is July, and
I think particularly figuring out what should be on the signs and ordering them, like, do that. People start floating the river in March, which is ridiculous, but they do. So, you know, ready
I can have the signs drafted tomorrow to anyone on the board who wants to do a smell test.
and share it with
I'll
the
share
gym.
it. Get cooking on that because that's really cheap and easy.
If you share it with me, I'll share it with all my
Yeah, I'll share it over
partners.
to Jim, and we'll have on this on the signs cooking by the end of the week.
And don't let the best be the enemy of the good, because we just prove it in the future. We're just going to need some.
Buying a new sign costs like $25 on Amazon. It's very easy. In any case,
I have a question for Courtney. Courtney Buckley is online. Courtney, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Jim?
We've already talked about the fact that there's some kiosks already up at certain. Consider using those kiosks, or are they inaccessible for this type of use that we're talking about right now?
I just want to get my eyes on it and kind of give it the go-ahead. I've already talked to Mike Wachowski, who's our land and access coordinator, and he's on board with us posting things there, or you posting on our kiosks.
But I think that's a really important point, because I certainly have used the state kiosks in the past to post things, but I always ran them through the fisheries biologist. So I think that even though this is something that, cover everything if there's a real hazard, but it's important to respect the fact that the state has jurisdiction over the river and the kiosk.
nothing that we post on these kiosks is not going to go through with the state for a smell test before spring, certainly.
Just a short observation. There's nothing that rapidly changing signs. Some of the fisheries we visit, and those warning signs, like right before you step into the water, are kind of eerie, and I would worry that something that we want to bring attention to would get lost in a kiosk and should be independent from other information about the watershed.
But I mean, that's why on the edge of the kiosk, it's not just the different things on it, it's like right there.
Yeah.
That was my idea. For what information, yes, you want to post it on the kiosk in the regular way, but to have some sign that really alerts people when it.
Your point, Andrew, there are two distinct put-in spots at the rec park. There's two paths. There should be a sign, more or less, can we use your kiosks on a spur-of-the-moment situation if we think it's appropriate. That's what I'm really getting at. Our warnings about Dynamo and other past issues that we wanted the public to know about.
Yes. Yeah, I don't want everybody just posting what they, want, but, we've had this conversation a few times, and I think it's important that if there is a severe hazard, close by or between put-in points, and our kiosk is the most, reasonable place for that to be, Jim, I'll give you the go-ahead to post something there. If you could just give me a heads up, I think, just keeping me in the loop. And then if the hazard has passed or cleared, if you just remember to take that sign down.
Yep.
Okay, so just to recap, we have compensation, so we're going to continue conversations about sinking fund, or funds being available to help support this. The notification on some sign design and sign postage, and communication with all interested parties. Looks like Nick that happening. I would also encourage the use of our social media, because it seems like a lot of people. So, yes.
I'd like to just circle back to the question of the alcohol intoxication or other forms of intoxication too. My understanding is there was a river in Maine, the Saco River in Maine, that had a huge problem with drinking on the problems for the landowners, and children couldn't be using the river because it was full of drunken people. And my significant enhanced law enforcement presence that just basically, shall I say, flooded the area, discouraged from that kind of behavior. I may be wrong about that, and they had a much bigger river, they had a much bigger problem, completely out of control. People who own property are afraid to go in the river or let their children. And I wonder if we should explore the question of what, if anything, the town could do in terms of controlling that sort of misbehavior. And it's something that the Alliance always talked about, and we just never had the time and resources to do it. I have real problems with this behavior, and if there could be any kind of push to it so that law enforcement in a multiple communities were addressing it, it might actually deal with some of the safety problems. I'm not saying I have an answer to that, but I just think that's something to keep in mind, because that's a real source of problems for other river users. Issue. And again, if they're drunk on the river, they're drunk when they get up and get in their car.
Okay. So it sounds like we got some plans moving forward that I recapped, as well as further discussion on law enforcement presence. Terrific. Thank you, everybody, for your input and your conversations. Next on our agenda is the tree work award for both the cemetery and Old West Road. And we do have bids here.
Okay, so for the work at the cemetery, which cemetery?
Evergreen. Actually, immediately above Glenn's father's grave.
Guys, we're still. I should have worked in corruption, I swear to God. For the work at Evergreen Cemetery are from Lake Pike, $1,900. The similarity, they were bidding on the same thing. Do we have any basis between the bids in terms of past experience or anything like that?
Not at all. They actually cooperated on the last cemetery. a sub.
Okay.
But this is a much smaller job than the previous one. This is just one tree that has extensive damage to it. I should have taken photos and brought it.
in the past.
Yeah, we use both. We regularly use both.
Well, in the absence of other award that contract to Blake Pipe for $1,900.
Motion made, is there a second?
Second.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right.
Okay, Old West, we have a bid from Blake Pike at $2,800 and Greater Heights at $4,000.
Is a large dead, I think it's an oak, maple tree at Shepherd Lane, which is gigantic and close to wires. A challenging tree that is dead, and it certainly is going to fall across the right of way and become a very big mess at some point. The cemetery tree, this is less urgent, more important.
Why isn't it more urgent if it's near the road?
It's not, this is not going to, like, this is certainly going to be a major road hazard in the foreseeable future. Is that a people being in hazardous way automatically?
The tree cemetery is gonna
Damage
broken already, and if it
With that,
and,
yeah.
and the one that's on Old West Road, it loses branch, trees, as the wind goes through,
Yeah.
different. Really needs to come down.
Keegan, you had a question?
Is that tree within the power company's right of way, Mark?
I don't think it's close enough to the wire.
It's on the other side of the road.
But it's too close to the wire.
Would that be something to look into? Because
No,
it's not, the wires are on the other side of the road, Darren won't even touch that.
Yeah, usually it's wires on that side of the road where it's like 5 feet, 10 feet. Usually the line is 15 feet. This is not 15 feet. But no, I appreciate the idea because Granite Green Mountain Power would be our first call.
Okay. Other sorts of information, I would make a motion to award the tree, taking down the tree on Old West Road to Blake Pike at $2,000.
Second.
Motion's been made by Cynthia, seconded by Jamie. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next.
What will happen to the trees that he takes down?
In this case, the landowner on the Old West Road tree,
Okay.
the pine tree in the cemetery is, so we did that as a get rid of it type.
Okay, I just don't want him to be burning it.
No, he certainly won't be burning it on the site.
I don't want.
The one, if anyone's in the room and is looking for some pine for some reason, we have a beautiful pine tree. But yeah, the previous pine trees in the cemetery that we took down were likewise.
I understand, but I think that at this point, when in all further situations, we need to ask someone how they're going to dispose of the tree.
Okay.
Because we don't want to be in a situation.
Yeah.
it costs more.
That's fine with me.
It costs more money. It's going to cost town more money for them to haul the brush out than it would be for them to chip it.
Thank
in
you.
most instances.
That's
We're
that would be fine. Shipping would be fine.
CIF auto insurance coverage. There was a change in that. Nick, can you explain that?
Where they give you the two options. As VLCT explained it in their email to us that put this on our agenda, they $250,000 coverage cap for the insurance, and I don't want to try to put myself on an island and outside of my knowledge base. As I understand it, option A for many years. Option B is the thing that they were legally required to offer towns because the option A differs from standard liability and insurance regulator. The state has required them to offer towns both option A and the would be more expensive for passive ratepayers, so it is likely that if our insurance rates and contributions for these things would go up. But I do not have numbers on how this will affect us directly. But the D scenario is option A.
What is this covering? What is this covering?
This is
yes. But I mean, we have trucks. We don't have automobiles.
Yes.
There's still automobiles. Like
No, I know, but I mean, it's just
so I will
the
read
water department, the fire trucks.
I will read this paragraph verbatim from the league. Dear passive, here is a special note that with your the signing request that you see.
That's not. I read that.
Yes,
No.
that is the.
You want to know what vehicles are covered under this
Yeah.
policy?
Yeah. Carbon trucks. That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So information to the contrary, I want to stay with what we've been doing. I don't have analysis of why we shouldn't do the other one, except that it would be more expensive, I'm sure.
For cost control purposes in the past is what the gist of the email can be summarized as.
So if we went with option B, your limit would be less.
What?
The $10 million coverage limit is the option B.
Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Because I don't even, I have no context, I have no way to evaluate. I mean, what is this? They're doing 250,000? I would assume they are.
All towns were previously doing this 250,000.
All right, to stay with the 250,000 limit per occurrence as we were in the past, but I'd like to understand if there's any information that would lead to another conclusion in the future. So if they really want us to consider this enough information to switch.
So just for clarification, it's my understanding that this is for uninsured or underinsured motorists.
Correct.
Only.
Only.
Correct.
Yeah, it is.
The maximum is $250,000.
To the other driver.
No.
So if an underinsured driver hits a fire truck that costs $500,000,
You're only getting 250.
You're only getting 250,000.
What is our history? You're required to have insurance. Not
Yes.
that you always do. Not that you always do. Well, you mean, you know, but that's a counterfact. That's data that might lead us to have another position. But in the absence of more than that, I want to stay with
for the $10 million coverage. So it is insurance thing. They would pass on the marginal costs of this higher coverage to us directly. But yes, it would be directly linked.
And it appears that there's no in between. It's either 250,000.
Okay, I'm willing to consider alternatives in the future, but I can't go to an unknown higher cost in front of me. So, I mean, I think that, was it Mike? I think Mike's point was a good one. But I would like to know more about what the 10 million, then maybe the increase in cost wouldn't be that much. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it should be along it through their actuarial standards, so it should be like they should be able to charge us close to marginal cost. But these things that happen are so rare that it may be that we're flow to it, so it may be that their numbers are a little bit further off, but they could also be using a much broader pool. Like, I'm not a person who's qualified to judge the insurers other than trusting that they will actuarially pass along the marginal cost to us.
With the limit of $250,000 for as depicted in the material from the Vermont League.
Myself to
And
sign.
authorize Nick Zayas to sign for that decision, but I would also like to ask for more information about the alternative for future consideration.
Okay, we have a motion. Additional discussion.
Is it only, this insurance is through the Vermont?
Yeah.
The League of Cities and Towns.
So there's no other.
Through all of our insurances.
There is other options, but it's gonna cost you a lot more money, because
No, but I mean, it's possible that other towns might want to know more about the cost, and then it will be more. You know, I mean, that's great. Thank you. No, I just can't do that. But I think they should come up with more than that.
okay. Favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Next, moving. First, we have backup plow drivers.
I'm thinking that we should, because it involves a personnel decision on which of the pool of applicants we've hired, we'll move that in. And we can address the White Creek contract now.
Okay. Added was the White Creek plow contract. Just for the interest of the public, we contract with the town of White Creek to do some plowing and road maintenance for us on roads that are, so we have the contract that's included there.
I make a motion to approve of the plowing agreement with the town of White Creek, Pole Hollow, as presented in the contract dated November 1st, 2023.
Is there an amount in
Amount.
there?
Yes, it's $120 to plow each trip. Client on a monthly basis.
Motion's on the table. Is there a second? Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great. Next is old business. 7. Authorized new scope.
Okay, so we talked about the Ash Borer grant, said we wanted to to which roads we can use based on a circle based around our designated. So that led to one really, really good project, which is scoping this grant for. There's wires all over the place up there. There's a bunch of big ash that are right along the road. So I'm looking based on the total number of ash trees along the road and the size. I had a proposal to cut about 20 ash trees along Buck Hill Road, and I'm just looking through which we will write the grant.
And Nick, we would do doing the replanting at the rec park after we deal with the trees.
They're there is one fun little caveat here, which is it allows us to enter into private agreements with landowners to take these trees as well. And that's last meeting when we were talking about this. So in the event, one thing that we could do as part of this program is authorizing or offering landowners that are having trees cut
away from the road,
that we can give you a tree that we can plant. Some of this. Actually, Jim is going to be getting me a catalog of trees. They're both hardy and really high quality. So I'm going to work off of the menu that Jim pulls from Champlain Valley Conservancy for the plantings, and of the park being the main place to replant, but also offering these trees to, if you want any at the school for some reason for plantings, that's always an option as well. But we can agree with other third parties to take these trees.
Okay.
So.
I make a motion to approve in concept.
Sense of the board or a motion to approve in concept, that's perfectly fine. Both of them work. But operate off of that model.
You got a question, Joe?
Just a quick question. I think it's a great idea. 20 ash trees in theory, and the size of the town is, a pinhead. Are they going to continue with?
Be funded. We're just trying to take advantage of it while it's here.
And the program is expected to be funded pretty much year in, year out, but
it's competitive.
It's by, you have to be close to the designated village centers. So that means that we should be able to at least be offsetting 50% of the ash cutting cost of every ash tree in the core of the town, within about half a mile of the designated village centers.
Like either East Arlington.
East Arlington or say going into West Arlington is in the Water Streets area, right around Tory Lane. So it's not a huge circle right top of the hill. It doesn't go all the way down into near West Arlington.
Like cover the whole town.
Yeah. Only a small fraction of the ash trees in the town do qualify for this funding. Knowing how much liability we have for all of those ash trees.
But we have been putting money in a sinking fund for hazardous trees. Because we knew it was coming.
And we'll have to continue. Steve, did you have?
Would it include stump removal?
So that's something we haven't considered.
Okay.
Because it's something that it should be within the scope of work to do so. Typically, for many of these, some of the ash trees that are on the school property in the right of way on the very back side of this work area. But some of those that may be interrupting a ditch line, this could be something that Mark can look at and see if we can get some of those stumps out as part of this. I'm happy to go and price stump grinding as part of this. Find relevant.
Yeah,
but that could be a great
only,
way to get some really good drainage improvements.
But only in the case where, or anything like that, not for aesthetic purposes. I mean, if they're farther off the road, they're just gonna.
Buck Hill Road, if you take them down, I would say you gotta take out the stump too.
It depends, where it is in relationship with the shoulder of the road or the ditch line.
Yeah,
If it's
something
farther,
like this,
if it's a little farther out, probably leave it.
So we don't need a motion, but is just to ensure that we have reached out for this new work.
Yes.
Glenn? I'm good with it.
Good.
Okay. Our administrator in our packets. And next we have warrants and orders.
Meant around the town hall. Where was that? Is that out
So
back?
front entrance of the town hall. JJ was fixing it the other day, and he said look at replacing between the sidewalk and 7A, the So that requires two things. It requires approval by the community house board, because they are the ones who actually control this curb cut. So we've pushed it to the state and done it, and they have approved of the project in concept. And then the community house board is actually meeting right now, or an hour ago, to review the proposal, knowing that the board is not by any means bound by that, but we certainly wanted to ask them if they were interested in allowing. Right
between the sidewalk where you drive out through, between,
there's about 4 feet of gravel.
Okay, in the driveway.
In the
You're going down the
driveway of the town
driveway.
community
Okay,
house.
see, that's what was not at all clear to me. I didn't know where you. And there's just gravel on the driveway, and so.
it was blacktopped at one point.
Or would we be, because this is still be dirt.
It would be just between the 7A side of the sidewalk and 7A.
So about 4 feet.
Not from here to the wall, and the width of the driveway.
You know where the sidewalk goes across our driveway? Between the sidewalk and the roadway. There's a 4-foot strip of gravel that they want to take up and put.
I'll have to go look at it. I mean, it sounds innocuous, but I just still don't understand what you're talking about.
I'll walk down with you.
Okay, and I guess I would have liked to see the proposal before it went any further, before it went to the community, because I've never heard about this.
Absolutely. We'll try to turn this around. I was trying to give us an opportunity to potentially catch the end of the asphalt plant being open this year, and we may still be in that position. It passes us if it's the.
Okay, you want me to go down? Should I go down and look at it? Because I'm not supporting it unless I know what
We're
you're
not
talking
voting on
about.
anything. He's just.
Right now, you can. But it certainly is something I will not push the permit up to the state. There is not a permit fee on this warrant. But yeah, we can put that up for a final vote at the next meeting and hold off on that, because this is something that doesn't need to happen until spring if we do it anyway. But if we put the permit in for a full year,
Yeah,
so
and
whenever we get to it next
I totally
spring.
understand dealing with maintenance problems and trying to solve them. I just want to understand what you're doing.
Absolutely.
The other thing was something somewhere.
They're seeking priorities. If anyone on the board would like thinking about the future vision style meeting, they have no official business. They are thinking about what happens after the beautiful form. What are the next steps? What are the next things they want to either think about with the town, be it other things, be it further housing liberalization that they may want to make efforts on, be it the regulation of certain commercial activities as per Mr. Lane and things like that with commercial burning. There are always going to be opportunities for the planning. Say, if you guys have anything, they are meeting on this Thursday, and I'll be at the meeting. I'm happy to convey anything to them.
Because we can build all the apartments and houses and infill the town, and if they're all on Airbnb, we're not creating affordable housing for anybody. Regulation or some form of fees, and that may not be something the town can do, but to me, some kind of a fee that housing or something. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I looking at that. And then another comment, I mean, infill discussion and having the walking tour, I think that was really good, and it sounded like it brought a lot of people together to I want to point out that although the areas you were walking have sewer, and without that, you're not, let me finish, you're not going to be able to do anything. And although we have the question of who's going to pay for them is really important. And we've just had a situation where the town has not managed the property taxes properly, and I'm taxpayers of the whole town paying in of just part of the town. So I think that planning, we have to be very sensitive on that, and we have to be sure that people are infrastructure to support that infill is not here.
And I talked about that ad nauseum as part of this
Didn't
event.
show up in the coverage.
It certainly
Good.
To the designers in Maine about this. I talked extensively with the state. I talked with Brett. Certainly, everything that is being done is in the context of, and we told it off.
But I think it's important for the townspeople to understand that in the context of that. Water and sewer, you got nothing, and dealing with the water and sewer is going to be expensive.
Frankly, at the event, no one made that point clear.
Good.
Clear hopes to make for more affordable homes in many capacities. What these constraints are, but certainly we take all of those. Something in that planning goes beyond what happened on Thursday. And I think I've expressed that to some of the board members in the past. Much of that program was about using Arlington's dream, not Arlington's reality, as a canvas on which to illustrate points in every region of the state that says you are going to need to think about wastewater if you want to talk about housing, and you are, but you certainly also need to talk about the other pieces too. Wastewater is not a necessary, just the only constraint.
No, it's necessary. I think that again, I want to say that the question of how the housing is used is also really key, because unless you are term occupation, whether rental or ownership, you're not solving the affordable.
This conversation moves forward, and it will be a very interesting and fruitful conversation at the planning level on the short-term rental matter. It's clear that they are committed to taking up the matter in some form or another, and that is very much be discussed as part of their thoughts on this in the future. Okay. So we know that there's no question about that. We know that there's been multiple models rolled out through the state. I've had conversations with the regional commission, and I had a really good conversation with Tangerman at the event about this matter as we were walking. So I can certainly say that I learned on that, but these are only a couple of the very important planning matters that the select board should know about. More of a free form period in its existence where they can do we want to edit this in other particular ways and have conversations that we did not during the bylaw revision process because we were so focused on getting this to this modernized version.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank
That's
you.
all I have.
Affordable housing?
And they actually had that in the slide deck at the presentation. Small A affordable housing. And there's a lot to be both in the big A affordable housing as in rent controlled housing as in operated by shires versus taking efforts to make housing in some form or another.
Because I remember when Arlington area renewal, when we had the West Mountain, however many years ago it was brought up, the Lake Perrin project, affordable per unit.
Yeah,
So,
and it can mean a lot in a place like Vermont where the build a house right now in the statewide. That's your number. Whether you're on Winooski ultimately, there are many, many different angles on which you need to operate on this. But one cool thing that's part of this Homes for All infill program is the state is intending from a holistic perspective, and that includes helping to foster contractors who can build that low, and they're going to use some of this conversation we had here to say, here's how you might be able to units that they've designed more efficiently in a town like this. So they do think about this holistically. They do think about the education perspective about how tradesmen are flowing in, as well as addressing all of the regulatory constraints on this. So the state is operating as if we are in the housing crisis that we all face. The state takes this seriously, and this toolkit that they are working on will both provide a series of models that you should be able to plop down on any lot in the state that has the water or sewer, and it will fit, and you will not find aesthetic objections. You will usually be able to fit it within state zoning law as preempted. So there's with all the best practices that the reformers elsewhere in this country who are making a big difference are thinking about this. They're following we're seeing housing laws passed in dozens of states every year. Where they're watching it, they're taking it seriously, and we know that they're going to put some kind of dent in.
Okay, anything else on town administrator report?
Warrant order C 23-8. Warrant in the amount of $3,180, which is the MSK Engineers Bridge Study.
Benedict Crossing?
It is.
Yes. Isn't he?
I'm asking him, is that a motion?
Yes, this is a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
For check warrant number WD-20 for the Water Department. Feasibility study, $20,715. Insurance, ChemClean, for a total of $23,556.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Make a motion to approve check warrant order A 23-4 for Smith's Company for $5,500.
Second, which audit is this?
21 and 22. I spoke.
Do we have them?
No, that this is one of the partial payments en route to getting them done. They are so it couldn't be too long now. They said very clearly they don't need to be on site any longer. They should be wrapping this project up soon.
But this invoice for every check written kind of thing.
Yes, this is the full annual audit they're going to produce the audit book.
Property taxes or any of those
This
things.
is
That's a
this
whole
is the
separate
pure annual audit. Sometime earlier this year.
thing. I know. I understand that. I just wanted to know if it was going to get at any of the other.
They certainly will be looking at all that happened during the 21 and 22 calendar years.
Okay.
So
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
General budget. Firehouse rental. Second tax payment, County of Bennington, $12,000. Peckham Industries, $6,059 for winter. Grand total of $38,702.40.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And that should,
That closes the warrants.
yeah. Okay, that's all for warrants and orders. Next we have
We go one finding on the other end of this regarding the affirmation.
I make a motion that premature discussion of legal and personnel issues would cause municipality to suffer substantial disadvantage.
motion made by favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
I make a motion to actually enter into executive session for discussion of Administrator Nick Zayas
Let's invite Mark.
and
Yeah,
Town Mark Robinson to remain in the room.
Second.
Motion made by Cynthia, seconded by Jamie. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll go in there. for
Recording
executive session.
stopped.